Mount Everest might be the tallest, but it's also packed with some pretty strange and some pretty cool secrets. Today, we're breaking down the 15 most unusual things about the world's highest peak. Let's start with number 15, the traffic jams. Mount Everest has long called out to adventurers far and wide, but these days, the dream of standing on its summit comes with a hefty price tag: traffic jams at the top of the world. In recent years, the rush of climbers heading for the summit has turned the mountain's narrow paths into bottlenecks, raising serious questions about safety and logistics. Come May, the prime climbing season, expeditions from around the world converge on the same tight trails, all vying for that brief window of good weather to make their final push. The summit ridge in particular becomes a choke point, with climbers often lined up for hours, either waiting to ascend or descend. A viral photo by a Nepali mountaineer captured this chaos, showing hundreds of climbers crammed together on the ridge, sparking a heated debate about whether Everest is simply too crowded. Some say it feels more like waiting in line at a packed ski resort than actually conquering a mighty peak. Well, seasoned guides will tell you, though, that the lines are just the tip of the iceberg. The real issue lies in inexperienced climbers and poor decisions made along the way. Snow climbers can grind entire groups to a halt, and technical missteps like using ascenders on flat terrain only add to the delays. It's a problem that's turning the roof of the world into one of its most dangerous waiting rooms. Number 14, the cost to climb. Think scaling one of the world's tallest mountains comes cheap? Well, think again. Climbing Everest isn't just physically demanding, it's a financial challenge too. Many may assume that the iconic peak could be tackled without breaking the bank, but the truth is the necessary permits and resources come with a hefty price tag. To curb overcrowding and enhance safety, Nepal is set to hike the cost of climbing permits. Come 2025, the cost for a foreign climber's permit to Everest will jump from $11,000 to $15,000. This move aims to streamline mountain tourism and better control the flow of climbers. The last fee review was back in 2015 when Nepal ditched the group system in favor of a flat fee for individual climbers during the spring season. This significant price hike mirrors Everest's booming popularity despite its daunting challenges. In 2022, a record 658 climbers made it to the summit. And in 2023, Nepal issued 478 permits, the highest number ever. These stats show Everest's enduring appeal, with climbers willing to invest heavily in their dream. Its unpredictable weather there only really adds to the climb's complexity. Recent seasons have seen climbers battling extreme cold and high winds, worsening conditions that drive up rescue and injury rates. Yet the allure of Everest remains undiminished, drawing adventurers from across the world. Though Everest straddles the Nepal-China border, most climbers choose the Nepalese side, despite cheaper, more accessible routes from China. This preference is a boon to Nepal's economy, with Everest alone raking in over $5 million during the spring season. Number 13, the world's highest weather station. On May 23, 2019, a groundbreaking moment in climate science took place on Mount Everest's southeast ridge with the installation of the world's highest weather station. This milestone was part of a broader scientific mission spearheaded by the National Geographic Society, in collaboration with Tribhuvan University and the government of Nepal, aimed at gaining a deeper understanding of the subtropical jet stream and other critical climate phenomena. The weather station, standing at 7 feet tall and weighing in at about 110 pounds, was specifically engineered to survive Everest's extreme environment, including the severe cold and hurricane-force winds. After extensive testing in New Hampshire and Nepal, the team led by scientists Tom Matthews and Baker Perry, along with 6 Sherpas, practiced assembling it with speed and precision. Despite their preparation, though, they faced a significant challenge when a crucial piece of tubing for the wind sensor was found to be missing, jeopardizing the success of the mission. The expedition was a massive scientific undertaking involving over 30 experts from various fields, including geology, glaciology, biology, cartography, and even climate science. The team conducted research at multiple elevations on Everest and throughout the Khumbu Valley, gathering water, snow, and rock samples, installing sensors to track vegetation growth, and using high-resolution lasers to map the landscape. One of the key achievements was drilling ancient ice cores from a glacier on the South Col, a site of immense scientific value due to its preserved ancient ice. These ice cores provided critical data on the glacier's age and climatic history, and they're estimated to be between 5,000 and 10,000 years old. Number 12. The Strange Case of Maurice Wilson. Among the many daring souls who've attempted to conquer Everest, Maurice Wilson stands out as one of the most audacious. In 1934, this British soldier and aviator set out on a wildly unconventional mission to reach the summit. Unlike most climbers of his era, Wilson had no mountaineering experience and only minimal knowledge of aviation. Fueled by faith and determination, he devised a bold plan: learn to fly, crash land near Everest, and then climb to the top. Wilson's journey began during World War I, where he sustained serious injuries from gunfire. Despite never fully recovering, he refused a military pension. Inspired by the tragic 1924 Everest expedition of George Mallory and Andrew Irvine, Wilson felt a divine calling to conquer the mountain, describing it in his diary as the job I've been given to do. With neither climbing nor flying expertise, Wilson bought a de Havilland DH-60 Moth, naming it Everest. His flight instructor doubted he'd even reach India, but Wilson's resolve was unshakable. He declared he would succeed or die trying. His journey was plagued with difficulties, including an accidental crash that delayed his departure, and despite the Air Ministry banning him from flying, Wilson illegally took off on May 21st, managing to reach Cairo and eventually Gwadar in western India, defying the plane's expected range. After being denied entry into Tibet, Wilson spent the winter in Darjeeling, where he met 3 Sherpas, Tewang, Rinzing, and Siring, veterans of a previous Everest expedition. Disguised as Buddhist monks, they embarked on a grueling 21-day trek to the Rongbuk Monastery, where they were welcomed and provided with gear from an earlier expedition. Wilson attempted the climb twice, enduring extreme weather, snow blindness, and injuries. Despite those hardships, his determination never wavered, and he meticulously recorded his struggles and hopes in his diary. The diary entries reveal a relentless spirit, holding onto the hope even as his journey took unexpected and perilous turns. Number 11. Erik Weihenmayer. Climbing Mount Everest is a daunting challenge for anyone, but Erik Weihenmayer faced an extra layer of difficulty, or so it might seem. Losing his sight at 13, Weihenmayer refused to let his blindness limit his life. On May 25, 2001, he became the first blind person to reach the summit of Mount Everest, earning widespread acclaim and even a feature on the cover of Time magazine. But how did he achieve such a remarkable feat? In 2005, Weihenmayer co-founded No Barriers, a nonprofit organization focused on empowering people of all abilities to overcome obstacles, develop creative problem-solving skills, build strong teams, and serve others. The organization's powerful motto, "What's within you is stronger than what's in your way," reflects the spirit of resilience that Weihenmayer embodies. His journey to the top of Everest wasn't without challenges. Initially, Sherpa guides were hesitant to join the expedition, fearing the risks of climbing with a blind person. However, once Weihenmayer arrived in Kathmandu and effortlessly navigated the bustling city, the Sherpas were convinced of his capabilities and agreed to support the climb. Even with the Sherpas on board, Weihenmayer still faced skepticism from fellow climbers who doubted his ability to safely complete the ascent. However, with 16 years of mountaineering experience under his belt, he wasn't just capable, he often assisted his teammates during the climb. Reaching Everest summit made Weihenmayer the first blind person in history to achieve this incredible feat, silencing his critics and earning him a spot among the elite few who have conquered the world's highest peak. By 2008, he had also completed the 7 summits, joining a select group of about 150 people to have climbed the highest peak on each continent. While he may not see in the traditional sense, Erik Weihenmayer has proved himself as one of the world's top climbers, redefining the meaning of disability. Number 10. Yiro Miura. Yiro Miura, a Japanese skier and mountaineer, is renowned for his remarkable achievements in sports. Born on October 12, 1932 in Aomori City in Japan, Miura was introduced to snow sports early on, inspired by his father, Keizo Miura, who was a skier. Competing in skiing from elementary school, he pursued his passion at Hokkaido University, where he trained professionally. He excelled in speed skiing and downhill skiing, particularly in backcountry skiing, which demanded mastery of wintertime alpine mountaineering. In July 1964, he set a world record for speed skiing in Italy, reaching 172.08 kilometers per hour. His mountaineering skills developed as he tackled larger mountains, often skiing down them after his climbs. On May 6, 1970, Miura became the first person to ski on Mount Everest. Using a parachute to slow his descent, he skied down 6,600 vertical feet from the South Col. After a 1,300-foot fall, he managed to stop just 250 feet from a deep crevasse. This daring feat was captured in the documentary The Man Who Skied Down Everest, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary in 1975, the first sports film to earn that honor. Between 1978 and 1985, Miura also achieved skiing descents on 7 of the highest peaks in Europe. Then, in 2003, at the age of 70, he became the oldest person to reach the summit of Mount Everest, a record he broke again at ages 75 and 80, with his last ascent on May 23, 2013. In 2008, he credited his longevity and strength to a healthy organic diet, including rice, fermented soybeans, miso soup, eggs, and fish. He trained rigorously, even recovering from severe skiing accident by walking with weights and using a low oxygen room to simulate the high-altitude conditions. His son, Gota Miura, has followed in his footsteps as a freestyle skier and alpinist. Who knows, maybe he'll be the first person to snowboard down Everest. Number 9. Kamita Sherpa. Kamita Sherpa is a legendary Nepali mountaineer renowned for his unparalleled accomplishments on Mount Everest. Born in Nepal, he comes from a family with deep roots in high-altitude climbing. His father, Mingma Shersing Sherpa, was one of the first professional guides on Everest after Nepal opened its borders to international climbers in 1950. Following in his father's footsteps, Kamita has become one of the most respected and accomplished climbers in the world. With over 35 years of mountaineering experience, Kamita has made history multiple times on Everest. Most recently, he completed his 26th successful ascent of the world's tallest mountain, breaking his own record of 25, which he set just last May. This latest achievement adds to a career already filled with remarkable milestones. Kamita's journey began with his first Everest ascent in 1994, after an unsuccessful attempt in 92. Since then, he's climbed Everest nearly every year, showcasing his extraordinary physical endurance and his deep expertise in high-altitude climbing. He first set the record for the most ascents of Everest in May of 2018 with his 22nd summit, surpassing the previous record of 21 held by 2 other climbers. He continued to break his own records in subsequent years, a 23rd summit in May 15th of 2019, a 24th summit just 6 days later, and a record-breaking 25th ascent in 2021. With his 26th, he firmly established himself as the mountaineer with the most summits of Everest. His connection to Everest runs deep. His father was a pioneering guide, and Kamita began working as a porter at the age of 12, carrying gear to Everest's base camp. This early exposure to the mountain's challenges and its beauty shaped his career path. Sherpa guides like him are indispensable for foreign climbers aiming to reach the summit, providing not only their expertise and knowledge of the mountain, but also vital physical support in navigating the treacherous terrain. Number 8. Trash Dump. Since Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay first stood atop Everest in 1953, thousands have followed in their footsteps, leaving behind more than just footprints. Mount Everest, the crown jewel of the Himalayas, has also become a high-altitude trash dump, particularly at the South Camp, the final camp before the summit. Perched at 26,400 feet, the South Camp is a graveyard of old tents, food wrappers, gas cartridges, oxygen bottles, and ropes, frozen in time and ice. Cleaning up this mess isn't your average spring cleaning either. The low oxygen, biting cold, and unpredictable weather turned trash duty into an epic struggle. Recently, a government-funded cleanup crew of soldiers and Sherpas hauled down 11 tons of garbage from Everest in just one climbing season. Impressive? Absolutely, but there's still an estimated 40 to 50 tons of junk clinging to the south side. Much of it left by early explorers before stricter rules demanded climbers pack out their trash. The cleanup mission either is no walk in the park. Sherpas brave the death zone to pry frozen garbage from the ice, while soldiers tackle the mess at lower altitudes and base camp. The trash is then sorted, and what can decompose is hauled to the nearby villages, and what can't is carried down by porters and yaks, eventually making its way to Kathmandu for recycling. One shining light in this uphill battle is the Mount Everest Biogas Project, turning human waste into biogas at Gorak Shep, a village near Everest. Then there's the Sagarmatha Next, an organization with a creative twist. They're turning trash into art. They plan to build a center near the Namche Bazaar where waste management meets community development, with a little art thrown in for good measure. Today's climbers are generally more mindful of their impact thanks to stricter regulations and a growing environmental consciousness. The Nepalese government has laid down the law though, bring your trash back or else. These efforts have helped to slow down the tide of new garbage, but decades of accumulated waste still pose a massive challenge. The cleanup crew has their work cut out for them, and it's going to take years to clear Everest of its legacy of litter. The mountain might be high, but the trash problem is higher, and the battle to keep Everest clean is far from over. Moving on to number 7, the Yeti. Mount Everest isn't just the world's tallest peak, it's also the epicenter of one of the most intriguing legends, the Yeti. Known as the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti is said to be an ape-like creature that roams the high-altitude regions of the Himalayas. For centuries, local legends and religious beliefs have kept the mystique of this elusive creature alive. Described as a large, man-like figure covered in long brown hair, the Yeti is deeply woven into Himalayan culture. Local names and stories paint it as a glacier-dwelling being with supernatural powers. In the ancient Bon religion predating Buddhism, the Yeti was revered as a powerful entity that walks like a man. The first whispers of the Yeti reaching Western ears came in the 19th century with Himalayan tales of creatures capable of eating humans, or in its smaller form, sheep. Initially dismissed as mere folklore, these stories gained traction as Western mountaineers delved deeper into the Himalayas in the 20th century. One of the most tantalizing pieces of evidence came from Eric Shipton, a renowned British mountaineer in 1951. His photograph of a large human-like footprint in the snow placed next to an ice axe for scale ignited global fascination. Shipton's reports of similar footprints on the Biafo Glacier and the Karakorums only fueled the intrigue. The idea of the Yeti haunting Mount Everest and other Himalayan heights captures the imagination for good reason. The harsh conditions, remote landscapes, they leave much of the area unexplored, hinting at the possibility of hidden, unknown creatures. Shipton's photo, along with other reported sightings and mysterious footprints, offers tantalizing, if inconclusive, evidence that keeps the Yeti legend alive. While many scientists remain skeptical, some have conducted DNA analysis on hair samples and other supposed Yeti artifacts. Most of these studies suggest that the samples belong to known animals like bears, but the idea of an undiscovered species still sparks curiosity. Mountaineers and explorers often report strange sightings and eerie experiences in the high-altitude terrain, adding personal testimonies that only deepen this mystery. Number 6. Life finds a way. Mount Everest, towering at 29,032 feet, is the ultimate symbol of nature's extremes, a place where life seems impossible. Yet life on Everest is a remarkable testament to nature's resilience and adaptability, thriving in an environment that challenges every rule of survival. Vegetation on Everest is pretty sparse. The highest recorded plant is a type of moss clinging to rocks at over 21,000 feet, thriving where temperatures plummet. Lower on the mountain, below 18,000 feet, the plant Arenaria dots the rocky landscape with patches of green. Recent studies using satellite data from 1993 to 2018 reveal that vegetation is slowly expanding in the Everest region. Plants are now appearing in areas once thought barren, including subtle but significant changes in the ecosystem. While the plants here are pretty sparse, the animals on Everest tell an even more astonishing tale of survival. The black jumping spider, it holds the title of the highest non-microscopic permanent resident on Earth, found as high as 22,000 feet. These resilient little guys survive by feeding on insects carried by the wind. The bird life too on Everest is particularly cool. The bar-headed goose, known for its incredible migratory endurance, has been seen flying over the summit itself. In 1953, during the Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary's historic climb, George Low reported seeing these geese soaring above the peak. The chough, another hardy bird species, has been observed at the South Col at 25,000 feet, with the yellow-billed chough reaching as high as 26,000 feet. Even the Himalayan black bear and the elusive red panda are part of Everest's ecosystems, found at altitudes up to about 14,000 feet. In places where survival seems impossible, life finds a way. Everest's flora and fauna not only survive, but thrive, proving that even in the harshest conditions, nature knows no bounds. Number 5. Reinhold Messner. Climbing Mount Everest is no walk in the park. It's a bone-chilling, lung-busting ordeal where the lack of oxygen can turn your dream ascent into a nightmare. Most climbers wouldn't dare attempt the summit without supplemental oxygen. But then there's Reinhold Messner, the man who seems to have missed that memo entirely, or perhaps maybe he just ignored it. Born in 1944 in Italy, Reinhold Messner is a legendary mountaineer and polar adventurer, renowned for pushing the limits of what's possible. In 1978, he pulled off this seemingly impossible. He climbed Everest without a whiff of supplemental oxygen. While most of us would struggle to catch our breath at sea level after a brisk jog, Messner was scaling the world's highest mountain with nothing but the thin air of the death zone to fuel his lungs. Everest is a place where the air contains just 1/3 of the oxygen available at sea level. Most climbers wisely bring along bottled oxygen to stave off altitude sickness, hypoxia, and other fun ailments like cerebral and pulmonary edema. Definitely not conditions you want to flirt with at the top of the world. But Messner, along with his climbing partner Peter Habler, threw caution to the icy wind in May of 1978. Starting from around 26,200 feet, they made their way to the summit, where Habler, perhaps wisely, hurried back down, while Messner lingered, savoring the moment. This groundbreaking climb proved that it was indeed possible to conquer Everest without supplemental oxygen, rewriting the rule book of high-altitude mountaineering. Oh, and not content with just one superhuman feat, Messner returned 2 years later for an encore. In 1980, he embarked on a solo ascent of Everest from the north side, again without oxygen. Over 3 grueling days, he faced a fall into a crevasse and the unforgiving elements. But on August 20th, 1980, Messner stood alone on the summit, solidifying his status as one of the greatest mountaineers in history. Everest was just the beginning. Messner went on to become the first person to climb all 14 of the world's peaks at over 26,250 feet, often blazing new routes and tackling solo ascents. His achievements aren't just about reaching the top, they're about redefining what it means to be a mountaineer, turning the impossible into just another challenge to conquer. Number 4. The changing height. Mount Everest isn't just playing hard to climb, it's playing hard to measure. Over the years, the world's tallest peak has kept surveyors on their toes, literally and figuratively, thanks to its shifting nature and the whims of tectonic plates. Back in 1954, the Survey of India pegged Everest at a towering 29,029 feet, not bothering to include its snowy cap, perhaps thinking of it as the mountain's ever-changing hairstyle. This figure held strong for decades until modern technology and a touch of international rivalry stirred the pot. The big question, should we measure Everest from its rocky scalp or include its frosty toupee? Well, China and Nepal, the mountain's proud co-owners, had a bit of a friendly tiff over this. The Chinese preferred the no-nonsense rock-bottom measurement, while Nepal opted to include the snow and ice, perhaps wanting to give Everest every inch it deserved. So now we're in 2020, a year full of surprises, including a newfound harmony over Everest's height. In a heartwarming display of cooperation, Chinese and Nepalese teams joined forces, braving the thin air and icy winds to settle the score. After much number crunching and GPS wrangling, they announced the new official height at 29,032 feet. Yep, that's right, Everest gained a modest 3 feet, perhaps standing a little taller knowing the world was watching. But Everest isn't content to stay still. It's perched on a restless boundary between the Indian Ocean and Eurasian tectonic plates. This mountain is constantly involved in a slow-motion wrestling match. As these plates push and shove, Everest gets nudged upwards, growing ever so slightly over time. Think of it as nature's version of a growth spurt. Now, measuring Everest isn't for the faint of heart, or the math adverse. Surveyors employ a cocktail of trigonometry, GPS technology, and just sheer determination. Nepal used the Bay of Bengal as its sea level starting point, while China took to the Yellow Sea. Teams from both countries ascended to the summit, battling the elements to plant their high-tech gadgets, all in the name of pinpoint accuracy. In the end, Everest remains a majestic, ever-changing giant, reminding us that even the tallest mountains have room to grow or shrink, and its exact height might keep fluctuating, but its place in our imaginations remains as lofty as ever. Number 3. Base jumping. For some adventurers, simply climbing Mount Everest just doesn't cut it. They crave that extra jolt of adrenaline. Enter Valery Rosov, the Russian daredevil who decided that scaling the world's highest peak wasn't enough. In recent years, Everest has become the backdrop for high-risk sports like base jumping, where human courage meets gravity in a thrilling dance. Base jumping, short for building, antenna, span, and earth, is all about leaping from fixed objects with a parachute, and Everest has become a prime stage for these heart-pounding feats. Valery Rosov's record-setting jump in 2013 is an example of pushing the limits. He leapt from an altitude of 23,688 feet, setting the record for the highest base jump ever. This wasn't just a wild stunt, it was a masterclass in skill, bravery, and technical precision, all performed in the unforgiving environment of Everest. Now, the primary challenge of base jumping from Everest lies in the extreme conditions and the physical demands. At his jump altitude, the air is thin and oxygen levels are pretty low, making every movement more exhausting. The cold is bone-chilling, and the reduced atmospheric pressure requires specialized gear. His wingsuit was crucial. It allowed him to glide through the air, but it also needed to withstand the mountain's brutal cold and the unpredictable nature of high altitudes. The experience of jumping from Everest unfolds in several nerve-wracking stages. First, there's the free fall, plunging from the mountain's edge into the thin air. On Everest, this phase is especially intense because the jumper has less vertical space to gain speed before transitioning into the glide. This transition is critical. Shifting from free fall to controlled flight in the rarefied air can be unpredictable and treacherous. However, his success was the result of extensive training and testing, as the dynamics of high-altitude base jumping are still a mystery in many ways. Once that transition is made, the jumper then enters into the glide phase, soaring through the sky with speed. His jump saw him flying at approximately 124 miles an hour, covering nearly a minute of airtime before safely landing on the Rongbuk Glacier, 3,300 feet below his jump point. This part of the jump requires razor-sharp precision and navigation, as the jumper has to steer through high winds and rapidly changing weather. In the end, his jump was more than just a thrill ride. It was an example of our human spirit and relentless drive to explore and conquer, even in the most extreme environments. For those brave enough to leap from the roof of the world, Everest offers the ultimate stage for high-altitude adventures. Number 2. It takes time to climb. How long does it take to conquer the world's tallest mountain? Well, climbing Mount Everest isn't a sprint, it's a marathon that takes about 10 weeks on average, sometimes stretching to 3 months. So why does it take so long to reach the top? Well, the answer lies in a delicate mix of preparation, acclimatization, and the mountain's harsh conditions. The journey to Everest's summit begins long before climbers even set foot on the mountains. Months, sometimes years, are spent preparing both physically and mentally for this challenge. Training's intense, focusing on building endurance, strength, and cardiovascular fitness. Climbers also hone their technical skills, mastering ice climbing and crevasse rescue techniques essential for surviving the high-altitude ascent. Once on Everest, the expedition kicks off at Everest Base Camp. It's located 17,598 feet up. Here, the climbers gather supplies, organize logistics, and begin the crucial process of acclimatization, spending about 2 weeks at base camp to adjust to the low oxygen. Acclimatization is vital. Without it, the risk of altitude sickness, which can be life-threatening, increases dramatically. From base camp, the climb's divided into stages, with a series of camps set at higher and higher altitudes. Camp 1, 2, 3, and finally Camp 4, the last stop before the summit. Each stage of the ascent is designed to allow further acclimatization. The trek between these camps is physically demanding and can take 6 weeks or more. Climbers often employ the strategy of climbing high and sleeping low, repeatedly ascending and descending between camps to help their bodies adapt to the progressively thinner air. Now, the final push from Camp 4 to the summit is the most critical and weather-dependent phase of the climb. This segment, known as the Death Zone, lies above 26,247 feet, where the air is so thin that oxygen levels can't sustain human life for long. The climb from Camp 4 to the summit typically takes about 10 to 12 hours, with climbers setting off in the early morning to maximize daylight and avoid the dangerous afternoon wind. Reaching the summit is a monumental achievement, but the descent is equally, if not more, treacherous. Descending from the summit back to Camp 4 takes about 4 to 8 hours, and the journey back to base camp can take several days to a week. By this stage, climbers are often physically and mentally exhausted, making a descent a true test of endurance and willpower. In the end, climbing Everest isn't just about reaching the top, it's about the long journey that tests every aspect of human endurance, both physically and mentally. It's a journey that requires patience, perseverance, and a deep respect for the mountain's power. Number 1. The Sherpas. For most, climbing Mount Everest requires years of training and a steady supply of supplemental oxygen. But for the Sherpas, it's just another day at the office. The Sherpas, an ethnic group native to the high-altitude regions of Nepal and Tibet, have lived in the Himalayas for centuries, forging an intimate connection with the rugged terrain. Their deep-rooted knowledge of the mountains and their indispensable role as guides and porters have made them legends in the climbing community, especially on Everest. What sets the Sherpas apart is their extraordinary physical adaptations that allow them to thrive where others struggle. On Everest, where the oxygen levels are only a third of those at sea level, most climbers battle altitude sickness and rely heavily on supplemental oxygen. Sherpas, however, seem to defy those challenges, functioning with remarkable efficiency in the thin air, a feat that has long fascinated scientists and mountaineers alike. Research has uncovered that Sherpas have evolved a unique physiological trait that's contributing to their exceptional endurance. One of the key adaptations lies in the mitochondria of their cells. Sherpas possess mitochondria that are significantly more efficient at utilizing oxygen than those people from lower altitudes. This efficiency means they can generate more energy with less oxygen. Another crucial adaptation is found in their circulatory system, which involves the smallest blood vessels responsible for delivering oxygen. In Sherpas, blood flow in these vessels remains normal even at high altitudes, whereas it slows down in non-Sherpas. This enhanced microcirculation allows Sherpas to distribute oxygen more effectively. But the Sherpas' prowess isn't just about biology, it's also about skill and sheer endurance. Take, for example, their speed and efficiency on Everest. During one scientific expedition, a Sherpa descended 6,600 feet from the summit in just 2 hours, a journey that took other climbers nearly a day. And to top it off, he casually stopped for tea along the way. It's an example of their incredible physical and mental stamina. In the world of high-altitude climbing, the Sherpas are nothing short of superhuman, blending centuries of knowledge, extraordinary physiology, and their unmatched skill to conquer the world's highest peaks with grace and ease. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.